You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to our next edition of the Fezcast, whatever episode it is, I cannot remember. I've had more things on my mind though, but joining me tonight is Sam, well we're recording Monday night, Sam and Alex to discuss, well, what was actually not the most brilliant of weekends all told really, was it? But, you know, I think there's plenty to discuss and certainly some perspectives to take in relation to how it goes and everything. But first of all, before we get into it, I need to just let everybody know how I did in my marathon because Duncan forgot to mention it last week. You know, I battered my way around York doing the marathon, Sam. My Achilles went on 20 miles. So I did the last 6.2 miles dragging my right leg behind me. And you saw me on Friday night and I was still limping a little bit on Friday night. But yeah, I got it done, 5 hours 14. And well done to Duncan, who won the sweepstake, but did put all the money back in straight anyway. So I can forgive him for getting to mention it.
No, well done, mate. I've never run that sort of distance before, although sometimes I felt on the rugby pitch like I'd done a similar sort of distance to that. But yeah, huge congrats on getting through it. As I said off air, I've done my Achilles playing the game, and I actually stretch it off with my mum shouting and all sorts of stuff on the sidelines. So the fact that you carried on running, crawling, whatever it was that you did to get around is very commendable, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. You're very kind to say so. And I mean, yeah, you know, but it doesn't stop there. You know, next year we'll have a bit of a reset, and then next year I'll announce some other stuff I'm going to do. But yeah, I suppose, Alex, the first thing we got to speak about, though, on the rugby side of things is the news that's coming out. And I think the guys did mention it and touched on it last week, but Tom Willis is off to Bordeaux. We can't blame him, can we, really? You know, it's a short career, and if someone comes in with big bucks, you're going to take that opportunity, aren't you? And if your contract's up and we can't compete with that contract, well, you know, good luck to Tom. He deserves to make some money, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's clearly decided that it's worth the money to go to Bordeaux and not have the opportunity to play for England. You know, whether that's because Borthwick's told him that actually I see you in the squad, but I don't see you necessarily as a starting player, as he probably should be for England. And he's decided, I don't want to take that. I'm just going to go where the money is. I can, play for Bordeaux, start for Bordeaux, hopefully, and, do really well over there in the French league. But it's going to be a massive loss for Saracens next season.
Well, I think so, yes. And Sam, I mean, the first thing to say is brilliant timing by Saracens to announce it just before all of the squads were announced and everything like that, because then immediately he's not in the squad. So we've got him for this season. Obviously, there's got to be some planning around what we do to replace him. There is news today. I saw, rumours going that Jack Willis' brother has got a breakout clause with for Toulouse. That potentially, someone turned around to him and said, well, you could be the England 8 for the World Cup, that he might be tempted and, a like-for-like replacement almost. But other names mentioned, Jack Morgan apparently was seen shopping in Harpenden or something along those lines, having a coffee in Emil Hempstead. The New Zealand's number 8 potentially. Do we have to go big on our replacement, Tom Willis? Is Tom Willis that good a player that we really need to make a statement replacement for him?
I mean, number one, he's got the best frame of reference, isn't he, in terms of should I go and play in France and not play for England? I mean, his brother's been tearing up trees there for a while and he's absolutely adored by that lot down in the south. So fair play to him for that. Do we need to have a massive marquee replacement signing? Honest answer is I'm not too sure. I think we've got shed loads of talent in our back row, and we've got a lot in the back five in terms of a lot of players that can deviate, move around. We've seen Mara play there, we've seen Itoje play there, we've seen Ezekiel play there, we've seen McFarland play in either position as well. we've got so much talent in the back five that perhaps they're thinking, okay, look, Willis would be a loss to any team in any Northern Hemisphere or maybe even Southern Hemisphere club side. But do they look at it and go, do we utilise that money that we're creating a little hole in our salary cap? Do we use that money in a different position because of the amount of sheer talent that we do have in the back row, and we accommodate our play around that? I do think that the way Saracens went about playing last season and how they looked to start this season has been with a lot of front football that's originated through Willis piling in and coming off the back of scrums, off the back of balls, and doing his little dance that he does, which we all love. So maybe we just think, well, let's give Ben Earl the go ahead to really cement that number 8, and we play in a slightly different way. You've said for a long time you thought Theo McFarlane might do a job at 8, so maybe we think about utilising that. Look, the Saracens coaching team have got a long history of picking the right players and going with it. I suppose in the team we trust, but I think it could go either way. We could go all out and get a massive replacement, but I think it could work just as well not doing so and utilising the talent that we already have.
I think it'll be interesting because we can't get an exact replacement for Tom Willis, and we don't want to, because, clubs will start to learn how you play and they'll start to learn how to defend that. So actually, if we do bring in another number 8 like Jack Morgan, then it's how do we kind of, do it so we don't kind of put all the focus on him and all the pressure on him to come in and be, Tom Willis and be a replacement. And actually, I think regardless, we're going to need to change our style of play so it plays to the strengths of the people we have, rather than just bringing in a high-profile name and saying to, younger players or other players in the squad, we don't trust you to kind of play that 8 role.
Yeah, and of course, you got the likes of Nathan Michelot, who's a number 8. You got Toby Knight, who's presumably going to be on his way back from injury at some point or whatever. And of course, he's an old number 8 sat here who, I'd quietly come out of retirement. The only thing is, I can only afford 30 quid a week, Sam.
I was going to say, we could play a little game, couldn't we? It's that that game where you say something and the first thing that comes into it, you've got to say it before you get time to think. If you had to pick one player and you got the chance to sign it, and it was between Morgan and Williams, who do you sign? And I'm saying Williams straight away.
I'm saying Jack Morgan for the simple reason that he's a lot younger than Thomas Williams, and scrum half is a position we could strengthen. There's lots of different things in there. But Thomas is the same age as Ivan. So questions about that. I'm sure everything will come out in the wash. And as I said on our WhatsApp group, a lot of it is putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 7.64, whatever the answer is. A player, though, that has been getting a lot of column inches, and we've been talking about him quite rightly, really, is Noah Kalori. But also, there's been a few people who've been making comments about, are we putting too much on this young lad already? I'd just like to read out that there was a post on the Sarries Fans Forum that someone called Matt Lecky replied to, and I think a very sensible thing that he said was I think there has to be some sense of calmness regarding Noah. And I fear that it could be overexposure for the lad. Give him some protection from being the talked about player. And I replied back to him, and I'll throw this out to you, Alex, first to see what you think. My reply was, I can see your point, and yes, I think we do need to ensure that he isn't overexposed. However, when he does things like he does, then it's going to be hard not to talk about him. And, he's in the England squad already, in 36. So, he's around there. It's just, I honestly don't think I've been as excited by a backs player his age since I saw the 20-year-old Christian Cullen and the 19-year-old Jonah Lumu play for the first time. Noah is that good. That said, what we do know with the likes of Mark McCall, Mario Toji, who was also a pretty impressive 19-year-old, and Owen Farrell around him, Noah is in the right place to develop and not get overcome by the stardom that is undoubtedly coming his way, Alex.
Yeah, I think actually the Saracens kind of the team and the coaches will do quite a good job of managing his expectations of himself. You're not going to go out and score 5 tries every other week and actually helping him develop. It's more so what the media does and not putting loads of pressure, say, when he does, make his England debut or if he gets the opportunity and saying, oh, he's going to do amazing things for England. It's going to take time for him to develop. He is only young, and it's going to take that time for him to learn to play in the style that England wants to play and kind of develop that consistency where he can perform week in and week out. So then again, if you do what he does on the pitch, people are going to talk about him because that's what catches the headline. That's what's going to grab attention.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alex. And I think the important thing is saying that, if you're good enough, you're old enough, aren't you, Sam? I mean, and, you could pick a lot of players who've come through as teenagers, but then that's not made the next step up or even older than that. You'd say, our bête noire, as it were, Marcus Smith, he was fantastic for a season, got worked out a little bit. And, he's not perhaps kicked on as much as he should have kicked on. As I say, though, Noah's in the right place to learn his trade, though, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think I'd probably take what you said there, which is quite right, and maybe even take it on one step forward, which is, how do you know how good a player is until they've been tested at the highest level, until they've been tested, their mettle has been tested, their mental strength has been tested, not just their physical strength, but, they've dealt with adversity, they've dealt with, staring down the barrel of a gun in some respects. I remember Johnny Wilkinson years ago said that one of the biggest turning points in his life was when he went on that tour of doom down under, where they got smashed by the Aussies and smashed by the Kiwis and came back well and truly with the tails between their legs. And it made him a better player because it lit a fire in him. And actually, maybe Noah's, really being honest, okay, he was found out a little bit on Friday night. We'll come to that in a bit, but maybe he does need to go and get a bit of a shoeing. And let's see how he reacts to that. At the moment, he's riding the crest of a wave. Real players become superstars when, not everything's going their way. And I think that will be the test of whether he becomes the star that we all think he can become, or whether he, melts into obscurity like some of the others that we don't remember as much.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you there. And perhaps this is a good time now we move on to Friday night and Saints away. Alex, I take it, did you watch on the television? You weren't at the game, were you?
Yeah, I watched on TV.
Yeah, so you'll have a different perspective to myself and Sam, so Sam came up at halftime and found me and Duncan and pointed out that you were there with was it your father-in-law, Sam, and
Yeah.
you thought that he was a bit of a bad omen after the first 17 minutes, wasn't he? But I mean, let's start with the 3-word review, shall we? Just go through those quick, and then because there's a couple of points I want to make on the back of them. But the 3-word reviews. First up, Steve Cummins, Saracens 1971. What's up, Max? And yeah, I suppose Max hasn't had the best couple of games really since he had a pretty spectacular game. Got to try though. Gareth Baxter's put 3 3-word reviews in. He says number 1, yellow cost us, and we'll come to that in a minute. But it did. Number 2 was another weekend ruins, and then hospitality very disappointing. I'm not sure where that's gone there. Mark, the medieval rat. Burke can't kick. Theo can't throw. Well, I'll take a slight bit of issue there, and we'll talk about, in particular, Theo, I think, more. Ben Hoxhamer, slow start, costly. Yes, it was. Chris Duncan lacked 5% intensity. Not sure, but we'll come down that. Andrew King, Theo can't throw. I feel we are beginning to just blame one player there for issues across the team, and throwing in isn't just about the hooker, but we'll discuss that again. Steve T, weekend down pan. Well, again, I've got a point against that because I actually think the Friday night, Sam, the game was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, for a neutral and yeah, certainly my other half's dad was with me and said, look, he doesn't support either side. I forced Saracens down his throat a little bit, but he said it was just a very enjoyable game for the neutral to watch. It was end to end. It was pretty fast paced. All in all, a good game of rugby, albeit not if you've got the Saracens logo on your chest.
Yeah, and then the last couple of 3-word reviews. Chris G, the crusty colonel. He said, no second coming, and then explained it underneath. He said, probably should be comeback, but it's an obscure reference to Noah, which is so obscure, I'm still trying to work it out. But, I mean, Chris, if you could let us know what you mean by that one, it would help me. And then Josh Miller, 1992, after his 3-word review the previous week about buying final tickets, he's now got a couple of tickets he's selling his final tickets, which this is a thing, isn't it? I think guys, is that we do seem to be very much feast and famine, don't we? We're either the greatest team in the world or we're shocking. And nobody, Alex, seems to be able to find the middle ground. And I think we need to find the middle ground tonight, don't we?
Yeah, and I think almost I'd prefer it if we just had a couple of losses kind of together, because then you need to change something and the plan isn't working. Whereas if one week it works really well and, we can completely thrash aside, and then the other week we lose, the next week we lose, and we keep going back and forth, then we don't know kind of what to improve. And it's almost like the players are like, they don't understand why it's not working. They're like, well, it worked last week, why can't it work this week? And I think it's kind of coming up with that, like, problem solving on the pitch of saying, okay, the plan we used last week isn't working, so this is what we're going to do instead. If we can't win the aerial battle, then we're going to kind of go through the middle or vice versa. And I think that's what we need to work on, so that we're not having this win one week, lose the next, win one week, lose the next, which isn't going to help anyone.
Well, yeah, I think the important thing here, though, Sam, is to point out two things. Number one, Northampton Saints are a very, very, very good side. If you look at their backline, other than the Argentinian winger, you could put every single player from 9 to 15 in the England starting lineup against Australia on the weekend, and they would be very, very good. I think Finn Smith is your 10 for the foreseeable future, with George Ford as his backup. I think Alex Mitchell is a form scrum half, had an exceptionally good game. The centre partnership are fantastic. And in Tommy Freeman, you've got one of the top three wingers in the world game at the moment. I think when you look at our wingers, Jack Bracken, 3 senior starts. Noah Kalori, his 2nd senior start. I don't think they actually did too badly. And yeah, Tommy Freeman scored 4 tries. 3 of those tries, I think, came when we were down to 14 men, and we'll talk about the yellow cards in a bit. But, they're a very good side, aren't they? And, the other second point to put to you, Sam, is after 20 minutes when we're 17-0 down and we're looking down the barrel of a heavy, heavy defeat there, we did actually, as Alex said, worked out that plan A wasn't working, pulled plan B out of the bag, and suddenly we started making inroads to the extent that when you came up to saw us at half time, it was the proverbial half of 2 halves, wasn't it, Sam?
Yeah, spot on. And look, we have to take our hats off massively to Saints, who were intense. They were quick. Their ruck speed was unbelievable. They moved the ball away from the ruck very, very well. One of the things I did notice a lot was they used that BC channel a hell of a lot, which, for anyone that's played the game knows that's much more difficult to defend than the A's or just inside the A's channel. And they did that particularly well. They pulled us in, and then they spread it wide, and they got us on the outside more often than they didn't. So you've got to give a hell of a lot of credit to an exceptional Northampton team who, I think on that performance, you've got to put in the hat to win this league. I think on form, they're better than Bath. And as you've said, they have got the players to do it. And even up front, I know we had a bit of a chuckle about a certain Mr. Pollock, but it's, I think up front, they've got all that it takes as well. And do you know what? Franklin's Gardens, for a period of time, you went there and you weren't scared. You weren't scared to go there. It didn't have that atmosphere. Friday night, under the lights, the atmosphere was electric. The singing was going on. You had your mate behind you shouting and screaming. It was an intimidating place to play, I would have thought. And I think, yeah, you're right. We did change things up after the first 20 minutes. I thought we were dead and buried. To come back and be in the lead at halftime is nothing short of a miracle. And you've got to give the players a hell of a lot of credit for that. We played plan A. It wasn't working. We went to plan B. It started to work. And then, we were nullified a little bit by that yellow, which I know we're going to go into.
Yeah, but before we do that, we'd like to mention, and this is how he described himself, Chris the Bellends in the wheelchair section, who was the guy who gave me and Duncan last year when we tried recording at the that infamous game at the end of the season, the rounds of the kitchen sink. So we decided not to do any recording this Friday night, just in case he was there. And yes, he was there, but very knowledgeable guy and, very approachable. And we had a good chat with him, actually. And it was really pleasant. Half time, he was giving the referee the rounds of the kitchen sink. And I thought, actually, Alex, and I don't know what you felt from watching on the television, but I thought actually Woodthorpe had an exceptionally good game. It was kept the game flowing, number one. There are a couple of things that could have gone our way that didn't go our way. But then again, there was a couple of things that went our way that could have gone the other way. I did think their first try, Hendy was in front of Finn Smith when the kick got put in. But, split seconds and everything like that. And it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? But, he did really well, didn't he, the referee? And I think, he got the 2 yellow cards right, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be decisions, in a game that don't go your way, or things that might have, if you looked at after, you think actually that was offside or that was a high tackle or whatever. But I think he's right. I think, especially our yellow card, it just came from giving away too many penalties. And actually in the women's games, there was a lot of people saying there should have been a yellow card for that, and there wasn't. So I just think, yeah, Ricky only, yes, he was in the wrong. Normally it probably wouldn't have been a yellow card, but actually because of the pressure under the penalties we were conceding, he kind of just had to take one for the team. And then, yeah, I think the one for Northampton was also deserved, and I think the referee had a good game.
Yeah. The problem with the yellow cards, though, Sam, was our yellow card came at the wrong time, didn't it? And, you want to have 10 minutes unbroken play, whereas we had it split by half time. And that's just the nature of the beast. We only scored 1 try in that period of time when we were a man up. Great, took the lead and everything like that, and further extended the lead. Northampton Saints, however, when Marco went to the bin, and you're right, Alex, it was just taking one for the team, and it was always going to be that way, but you had to take that chance. But they got a full 10 minutes at a point in the game when our pack was beginning to tire a little bit. You were looking to make some changes or whatever, and they just exploited that. And the yellow cards for us came at a more opportune time for Northampton Saints than Northampton Saints yellow card for us, didn't it, Sam?
Yeah, I'd say so. Quick mention for Marco Riccioni, though. That man, I adore more and more with every game that I watch him play. Watching him walk off in front of the crowd there on the side, pointing to his Saracens logo on his shirt and nodding his head. I loved it. Absolutely love it. If I could get my arms around him, I'd give him a hug. But there's no way that's happening. Yeah, took one for the team. Correct decision. Loads of pressure from Northampton, which we just couldn't sustain for that period of time. And it is what it is. It is actually a bit of a shame. I would say I think there's two decisions the referee could have on another day gone the opposite way. I think there was an argument for one of their tries being a knock on. They went into ultra slow motion, and I personally do believe it was a knock on. And I've got a funny feeling that Christie maybe glanced a grade of a piece of grass. Can't get my words out tonight. Piece of grass on the way to the try line that another referee may well have given. That's a 14-point swing, and we're back in the game. So on another night, who knows? But yeah, I think look, all in all, the yellow card did come at a tricky time in the game for us. It swung the momentum well and truly back in the favour of Northampton, and we never recovered. We had a plan B. We didn't have a plan C, ultimately, did we?
No, I don't think, that's the way of it. Now, I'm going to pick up on a couple of the players that were criticised in our 3-word reviews. Max Malins, I think Max had a better game. The thing with Max is he's not a defensive fullback. He's an attacking fullback. So, like any, attacking fullback, you have to take the payment that he's not going to be great in defence. In the same way as if you had Freddie Stewart as your fullback, nothing's getting past him, but he's not going to offer you much going forward. So that's what you take there. Now, Max has had a couple of moments where he's dropped a couple or whatever. He looks a little bit languid, Alex. But on the whole, I thought the good outweighed the bad. Do you agree with me on that one?
Yeah, I think the noticeable thing is they were inexperienced wingers in Noah Claw and Jack Bracken. So if you have that kind of experience of someone like Shegan on the wing, you notice the kind of Max's defence less because it's needed less. I think when we have inexperienced wingers, we need a better defensive fullback because otherwise that back three just doesn't have the experience and kind of the skill set to be able to defend. But equally, Northampton put out a very good side. They have a very good back three. And I think, even like Elliot Daly would have struggled to stop, say, Freeman. So I think overall he did okay. And to be honest, no one had like an outstanding game for Saracens, really. So I think he kind of did the best with what he had.
Can I disagree with you both? Is that all right? Am I allowed?
Yeah.
I actually thought so. The criticism I had for Sagan for many many years was he was an insanely quick and exciting runner when it comes to attack. Couldn't defend Toffee. Noah Kaluri put in some absolute shots. His defensive positioning on the whole was 85% accurate, I think. He tracked back really, really well. He went and helped in backfield. And one-on-one tackles he made pretty much every time. Jack Brackham got bumped off once, which the crowd enjoyed. But apart from that, did some serious work in defence. I thought Malin's had one of his worst games I've ever seen him play. I think he was out of sorts in terms of his positioning. He got caught out many, many times from kicks through from both Mitchell and from Finn Smith. And I really do think it was a night to forget. I think he had all the support he needed in his back three partners. And I just think he was at fault for possibly 3 of our tries. And it will be a day to forget for him. Look, we know he is class. The boy is one of the best about when he's on form. He had a bad day at the office, and that's all that it is. But I do think that I don't think we can blame the inexperience of the two wingers, because I think they both put in a pretty decent shift considering, the scoreline and the team we were playing.
I do agree with you about Jack and Noah. And I think when they did get caught out of position, they had exuberance, determination, and speed to rectify their lack of positioning. Now, the other player who's taken a bit of grief is Theo Dunn. And there was a point where me and Duncan were just saying, just go to the front, put Murrow up in the air, and just win the ball. And to be fair, there was 3 or 4 lineouts where, and particularly in attacking part of the field, where we'd been under the cosh for those 20 minutes, and then suddenly you've got ball, good attacking lineouts, and he missed it, and he thought, oh, geez, it's going to be one of those nights. But I do think, to be fair to Theo, Sam, that he dragged it back. And I think there was a case that, right, we'll just go to the front, we'll get your confidence back. But then once he got his confidence back, his darts were pretty accurate for most of the second half until James Hadfield come on. And James did a great job coming on, didn't he? I mean, he's solid as. But I think Theo did drag it back, didn't he?
Yeah, look, I'm a massive Theo Dan fan. I think he is. I'm glad that he's back in the England squad, because I think he's there on merit. His open field play is phenomenal. The best of any hooker in the country at the moment, potentially. And yeah, look, we all have skills that we sometimes get a little bit wrong. If sometimes you pull your Achilles 3/4 of the way for a marathon, these things sometimes occur, and you just pull yourself through it, don't you, Jez? Let's sort of forget. And I'm pulling on all of my line-out experience here when I say this. It's not just down to one man throwing a ball, is it? There are some other blokes that have got to lift another bloke who's got to catch the ball as well. So there's somebody also calling the shots. So you've got to have that connect between all of those. We know in the first half the line out was a bit of our Achilles heel. Apologies to bring that up again, Jez, but it didn't work. There were 2 in particular within probably the first 15 minutes that, one on the right side, one on the left. Both didn't go right. Both, if they'd just gone to the middle/front, we possibly could have got something out of it, albeit maybe a penalty in front of the sticks or a try. And again, that gets us back in the game earlier, which means we maybe take a bigger lead into half time, and you can go on from there. But the scrum was working really well. So the set piece there, it was good. It was just the line out that let us down. But yeah, again, kudos to Theo. He pulled up his socks. Well, he didn't actually, but metaphorically pulled up his socks and got the confidence back. And that was a lot of that probably was a little bit down to Marrow's leadership. Look, he's calling the shots at the line out. Let's chuck it to the front a few times. Let's just get ourselves back on track, and then we'll start throwing it about a little bit as well. So probably you have to give Marrow a little bit of praise there too.
Indeed, you do. And another player in the pack who I feel, really did do very, very well was Hugh Tizard. I think Hugh is just having a spectacularly good season at the moment, Alex.
Yeah, I think, necessarily like playing alongside Marrow, he doesn't always get the kind of credit he necessarily deserves for the work he does, yes, in the packing and the line-out, but also just kind of around the field, like putting in the tackles and kind of doing that work that doesn't necessarily get the praise or get seen as much as, scoring tries or making line breaks does. But I think he's kind of that dependable person that's not necessarily getting called up for England or, getting with international honours, but is there week in, week out of Saracens and that we can rely on.
Yeah. Now, the other issue is Fergus Burke, and Fergus Burke's kicking to touch from penalties, because he does. I mean, the free word review that said Fergus can't kick, I think that's not right. He hasn't got the length, though, that Owen Farrell has. But Owen Farrell isn't kicking from hand, and it makes me wonder, because he's had a couple of problems with ankles and everything, that perhaps he's okay kicking from touch, he's okay kicking in open play, but he's not going to be taking those big howitzers to get. So you're relying on Fergus for that position, or maybe it's just a case of that we're just going to concentrate on Fergus doing it. You did pick up something that I actually spotted as well, Sam, when we had a couple of penalties down in the corner where we were at the bottom of the by the barbell stand, where he was pretty much dead-eye Dick, wasn't he?
Yeah, I did enjoy that as a former number 10 myself. I did enjoy seeing it. Was ironically it was the O in co.uk, so it was almost like a target that he was going for. But yeah, I think there was one awesome kick that he did where he took it all the way into the corner, and fair play to him for that one. But yeah, the rest of them it was almost a bit bemusing to me as to why. I mean, look, we're not expecting 50-meter kicks every single time, but some of them are 20, and I'm genuinely looking at myself going, that was an easy distance for me to get back when I was playing for Barnet Elizabethans. How is an international fly half not at least getting 30-35 meters out of these? It's a strange one. And the Faz thing as well, the only thing I can come up with is that it's about sharing the responsibilities. Farrell's taking the kicks at goal. So, they don't want to take everything off Burke, and maybe that has a negative impact on his self-esteem or whatever you want to call it. So that's all I can think of. But yeah, certainly for me, surely you're giving the kicking duties back to Faz. But, I know we haven't really mentioned Faz too much, but I have got to say as well on that front, and I don't know if you agree with me, Jason, Alex, I thought Faz had possibly one of his worst games that I've seen him play for quite some time. He looked knackered. He looked like he was 34, I think, on Friday night. He just looked like he was tired, particularly in the last 20 minutes of the game. Very pedestrian. But I don't know if that had something to do with, how our defence was a bit misaligned, because he's been the cornerstone of that defence. So maybe, one of the things that's been brilliant for us at home this year is that we've had a 10 and 12 combination that's really been ticking, and it didn't really tick on Friday night, I don't think.
Well, of course, I mean, Owen has now got some time off, hasn't he? Because we come into that period of time where the autumn internationals are being played. So, he's not been picked in the England squad, so he'll put his feet up. And perhaps now we'll have a quick talk about that England squad, because there is going to be Saracens involvement. You mentioned Theo Dan. Jamie George is in the squad. I don't know whether Jamie's injured at the moment because he wasn't playing on Friday night. Maro obviously will be captaining the team, although there are still idiots out there who are questioning even the fact that he's playing. And I just don't understand people who look at Maro Itoje and don't think he's the best second row in the world at the moment. But, as one of my bosses at work says, you can't fix stupid, can you? So, I mean, there you go. But Nick Ezekwe's in there, Ben Earl, obviously, and Noah Kaloria. I mean, we've got a good bunch of lads going out into these autumn internationals, and hopefully they'll be able to prove themselves. It does seem a bit weird that a lot of the players in this England squad, though, Alex, and it'll be the same for other, the Irish and the Scottish and less so the Welsh, because they didn't necessarily want to do the British Lions, did they? But the likes of Maro Itoje, Henry Pollock at Northampton, and the Northampton players who went on the British Lions, they haven't played an awful lot of rugby, have they? And yet they're back into international games.
Yeah, I think because the Lions tour, they haven't, let's say, played for their country since, the Six Nations, because they've obviously some of them gone away with the Lions tour. So I think it'll be really interesting to see kind of how teams do, especially England. How does Borthwick kind of take this and go, okay, we've got to win these games. It's important for the rankings. It's important for the draw then, for the World Cup. So actually, who do I want to play? Trying to nail down who's my starting fly half, who do I want in my back three, etc. So that actually, when the World Cup comes in 2 years' time, we've got a strong team. We know who our starting 15 are, rather than doing what we've done kind of in the Six Nations and previous years of going, oh, we don't know who's playing 10, or we don't know who's starting in which position. And actually, the team gets a chance to play together.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex, and I think that's the important thing is that, and it's the old Clive Woodward idea of the fact that when we went into that 2003 World Cup, you had 15 players who had 50, 60, 70, 80 plus caps. Finn Smith, Marcus Smith, George Horde, whoever it is, starts against Australia at 10. They've got to be your 10 now going through, and that they play every game now to that World Cup at 10. Much the same as what John Mitchell did with the women, Alex, that, he knew what his 15 was and he made sure that they all played together and got lots and lots of time together in international situations. Well, that's something to look forward to the weekend. But we'll have a break there and then we'll come back and be a bit more miserable about the rugby on Sunday, I suppose, is the best way of putting it, isn't it?
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Okay, well, welcome back, everybody, to our final part. And yeah, Alex, you were down in Tractor Country, weren't you, on the weekend at King's Home, or Queen's Home as they call it, when the women are playing. First question for you, right? And this is the big one, right? Because we looked at a pretty well-loaded Saracens team with a lot of returning World Cup stars, the World Rugby Player of the Year in Sophie De Goody playing, Rosie Gallagher, Marley Packer, Jess Breach, fully loaded, and yet Gloucester Hartbury put 40 points on us, and were we a bit lucky to get 14? Are Gloucester Hartbury too strong for this league, like the way that Saracens were perhaps 5 seasons ago? And is it just going to be a procession for Gloucester to get to the final again, and it's just going to be a bit of a foregone conclusion, a bit boring?
I think it's a foregone conclusion. I think probably if this fixture had come later in the season, we could have done a lot better and would have done a lot better than we did on Sunday. I think it was kind of just a day that nothing went right for Saracens, and one of Zoe Harrison's kicks from the restart pretty much went level with her. And, we had a scrum, and I think that just kind of sums it up as just nothing was going away. The wind in the second half was going kind of against us. I think Gloucester would put a credit on the side, but I think also being in the PWR Cup final didn't necessarily help, because when Gloucester integrate their internationals back into the side, they were already focused on the league when they had all those Welsh players and Irish players come in especially. Whereas when Saracens started integrated, it was still kind of, we're still focusing on the Cup campaign, we're still focusing on non-internationals. So when the likes of Georgia, because Donna Rose came in, they, wasn't necessarily a focus on the league. I think, it just seemed very disjointed and like we hadn't properly integrated our players yet.
Yeah, it's a really good point you made there, Alex. And I think perhaps you're right. And I mean, it's also as well, you cannot underestimate the fact that the head coach was away with Canada and has had limited time with his day job, as it were. And I mean, yeah, fair dues. From that, we've gained some players, Sam. And we'll talk about Olivia Apps in a minute as well, which is a hell of a signing. But, did Saracens take their eye off the ball a little bit and letting Alex go off to the World Cup? And likewise, did that mean we didn't get the fullest preparation correct for the start of the competition proper, as it were?
Well, I mean, if you've got your if your captain, the head of your ship is not about, it's going to have a negative impact. I don't think anyone could say that. In terms of taking our eye off the ball or whatever it might be, I think more it's the other side of the coin, which is you can't stand in your way of that kind of opportunity for Alex. And long term, does that help Saracens because of the extra experience that he's gained in that international tournament? And the answer is probably yes. So it's kind of a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I just think, look, as Alex, seems to quite rightly say, sometimes you just get those days where things just don't go right. It clearly was a little bit disjointed with players just sort of being thumbed back into the team. A head coach that hasn't been around, and it's one of those days. I do think Alex makes a really, really good point about if the game came later in the season, would it make the difference? You could argue, given the Saracens' men's away form, that the best team for us to play on the opening game of the season, if we had to make it away, was Newcastle Red Bulls, who clearly are getting thumped left, right, and centre. And we were able to ease our way into the season a little bit. If we were playing Gloucester or even Exeter, there's a good chance that we might have been looking at a different result. So ultimately, Saracens early doors have got to play the team to beat away from home in the league, and they were clearly the better team on the day, and nothing went our way. So I think it's one of those onwards and upwards. As we've shown in the men's side, you only have to finish second. So if Gloucester go all the way and then we end up beating them in the final after not topping the league, happy days, right?
Well, I suppose that's the silver lining to the cloud, isn't it, Alex? We don't have to go to Queen's Home unless we have to play them in a playoff at the end of the season. And you would hope that if Gloucester were first, we would be second, or if we were first at Gloucester, we'd be second and we're playing somebody else, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and actually, a couple of weeks' time, we've got Bristol away. So actually, I think having these tough matches at the start of the season means, okay, if we get, results don't go away, we know what we have to do for the rest of the season to make up for that. And, playing maybe slightly easier teams like Loughborough and Leicester and Sale, where actually we can build up those points during the season, like as we go on. And then we know and we're more in control of kind of where we finish that table come to the end of the season, rather than going, oh, we've got to go play Gloucester, Exeter and Bristol away, and we could very well lose all of those, and then suddenly we're finishing third or fourth. But also on the coaching thing, really interestingly, Kevin Rouet was with the Saracens team, who's the Canada women's head coach. He kind of was just an observation when he said kind of after the game, oh yeah, he's just kind of seeing how it goes. But I think that would be really interesting to see where that could go for the rest of the season, whether you see playing very much like Canada did in the World Cup, or at least trying to.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, isn't it? And we've mentioned it before, haven't we, that perhaps we're going away from bringing through as many young English qualified players and saying, right, we need some superstars in the side. We need the likes of the Sophie D. Goodies and Olivia Apps, who we've signed this week, which strengthening a position that was looking a bit weak, wasn't it, Alex, at scrum half? And I had an interesting conversation with Dave Loxham on Friday night about it. He feels that, Tori Sellers has done really, really good, but does Tori now step back to be the definite number two because you've got a world-class operator coming in that scrum half shirt, Alex?
Yeah, and I think, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for Tori to step back. She's used to coming off the bench, replacing Ella. And actually, I think she kind of, when she does that, she brings the injection of pace that we sometimes need into a game. Whereas if we start off with that, it doesn't necessarily have the same effect. And, obviously, Olivia Apps is a world-class scrum half. She could be what we need to stand up to the likes of Mo Hunt, Lucy Parker, who are England's starting nines, and play for Harlequins next week. Actually, do we start Olivia Apps and go, what you need to do to beat Lucy Parker because you were practicing for this World Cup, so we're going to trust you and then let you do your thing, and then actually Tori Sellers can come off the bench to keep up the pace and momentum once Olivia Apps starts to tire.
Yeah, I mean, or the other way of looking at it, I suppose, and this is the interesting conversation that we had, that Olivia Apps wasn't the starting scrum half for Canada in the World Cup, and she was very much used as that last 20 minutes player to come on and give the spark. So maybe it'll go that way, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, look, some players are actually better suited to coming off the bench. We've seen plenty of players over the years do that. Ultimately, I think we're early doors in this season. We're still seeing players being signed when the season is underway, which is a little unusual, but it's going to take time for some of these players to bed in. It's also going to take time for the coaching staff to have a proper look at where does everyone fit into this team. And as Alex sort of mentioned there, it's there's plenty of games still to play for us to get used to it. But it's not the longest season in the world. And realistically, if we do want to be in the talk of honours at the end of the season, we have got to kind of get our act together as soon as possible and try and bounce back from this loss as quickly as we possibly can. And it doesn't come much bigger than the next game, does it?
Well, no. And before we mention that, I just want to say, was there any players, Alex, that really stood out? I mean, I've seen Marley Packer's stats, and they were pretty damn impressive. And obviously, Marley's come back from the World Cup. She didn't play an awful lot of rugby at the World Cup. She is at the latter end of her career, and I don't think she'll mind anybody saying that. She's not 22 anymore. She's in her mid-30s now, but she's clearly still got fire in her belly, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I think also having Beth Blacklock come off the bench, and actually, we had two fly halves on the bench, Beth Blacklock and Mina McDougall, and when we brought that on, we started to kick more, we started to gain some more territory. She didn't necessarily turn into points, but I think, that impact off the bench is what we've not necessarily had in previous seasons. We've had a strong starting 15, we've maybe had a few good players on the bench, but actually when we can start to say, we're going to have internationals on our bench, we're going to have Beth Blacklock, we can have kind of Paige Farris, etc. on our bench, I think that's where we're going to start to see an impact this season. And then also, I think Sydney Gregson's had a really good game. It's the point of just like, she's just going to do it all herself. She, kick through, gather the ball, and kind of start to make a break for it. So I think, she was very much like, if no one else is going to be able to handle the ball right, or you're just going to knock on, I'm just going to do it myself. So I think, yeah, she had a really good game for us.
Now, Sam, you did mention it's a big game coming up at the StoneX on Sunday. I've got to buy my tickets. I'm still going to buy my tickets. I'm going to go, but I've got to wait for payday. But I'll get my tickets tomorrow or yesterday if you're listening to this on Wednesday. But it is huge. I mean, it's selling quick for number one, and I mean, we keep on banging on about this, that we really need to get along and support the women's team, and even if a few of us who go or support the men come along and support the women, it's huge that we need to get down there and be that 24th player, isn't it, almost behind them. Quins, we know what Quins is like. It's the game, isn't it? It's the big game for us. But they had a bit of a shock in the weekend, didn't they, Alex? And I mean, seeing the result, was it 52-42? At home against Loughborough, and you were saying earlier on that Loughborough are one of the teams that you expect to win, but clearly they've made some big steps forward in their recruitment and their playing and their tactics and everything, and really did run Quins quite close, didn't they? So hopefully we could take some confidence from that.
Yeah, and it seems like although both teams scored a lot of points, clearly neither of them had a great defence. If, Loughborough to have 50 points when he's not great, but equally, Quins let 42 points in. So actually, Loughborough, who's not necessarily a team in previous years who've been competing, for that top four space, they've always kind of fallen outside of it. So actually, if Loughborough can do that, we should really be able to beat Quins. And yes, Quins will go away this week and look at it and say, what can we do to improve? But equally, we need to be looking at that performance saying, what did Loughborough do right? Where do they find the holes in the defence that we can then exploit whilst also playing to our own strengths and the strengths that, players like Sophie de Goody and Zoe Harrison have?
It's clearly the overriding, I think, this year in both the men and the women's game appears to be, Sam, and it's what I've wanted to see for quite some time, is that people and coaches have stopped thinking about how they stop the opposition and actually have gone out and done the right thing, which is, as I've always said, the best form of defence is attack. As my old coach used to say, you lose the toss, so they kick off to you, or if you win the toss, you elect to field the kick. You field the kick, you keep the ball alive, you go at the other end, you put it down underneath the post, you score 7 points, and you repeat. And that seems to be the attitudes to coaching these days, is they've gone away from having all of these different defensive things and saying, this is how we're going to stop opposition, and saying, actually, what we're going to do is force the opposition to stop us. And if the opposition has got the same attitude to the game where they're going to say, well, we just want to cause problems, it's going to mean that the game you're going to see 43-31 or 52-42 or even 40 points to 4, whatever it is. You're going to see an awful lot of points. It's going to become a great spectacle to watch, not necessarily for the gnarly purists like me who like sticking their heads in places where you don't get, you shouldn't be sticking your heads. But if you're a person who's come into the game and looking for excitement, at the moment, you're going to find it, aren't you, in the men and the women's game?
Yeah, and look, I think that it's the old adage that we're just going to score one more than you, and that's sort of the mentality. I think I will just to give a balanced view on this, because who doesn't love seeing an absolute hat full of tries? I will try and give a bit of balance. I think the purists do enjoy when there's like a real serious, solid bit of defence as well. So I hope it doesn't go away completely. I think even on Friday, although we got put to the sword by Northampton, we showed signs of some seriously gnarly defence at times, which I love to see. When there's a team that they desperately try to get over the line, and then one of their guys just get absolutely munched and pushed back 5 yards. It's brilliant to see. And I, as a player, arguably, I enjoyed putting their biggest man on the deck more than I'd enjoy scoring a try. So I hope that doesn't go away entirely, but I think you're absolutely spot on, and it's good that it seems to be over both sides of the game, the women's and the men's, that the attack in recent years seems to have taken the precedent over defence, and we do have that mentality of it doesn't matter how many you score, we'll just score more than you do, and that you are going to encourage more people into the game, surely, from if that continues.
Well, indeed. And Alex, I mean, that's the important message that we need to end this Fezcast with, that on Sunday, 3:00 kickoff, isn't it? At StoneX, I think it's is it £10 a ticket and £5 for car parking? I mean, it's a fantastic value for money, if nothing else, to come along. And, this is the fastest selling game for a long time for the women's game, but it's going to be a fantastic experience, a fantastic game, and a fantastic atmosphere if we get down there and support the women, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, it's how kind of we're going to see, the next couple of weeks, how Saracens and other teams capitalise on the World Cup. Obviously you had record attendances there, but then it's about getting people into the stadiums to watch the club games. And actually you saw that, like, Sale had a sellout for their game against Leicester on the weekend. And it's not a massive ground, but it's stuff like that that makes a difference to the players if they can see the support. I think Gloucester had it really well, where because you had people on both sides of the pitch, okay, they weren't massive crowds, but because there were people on both sides, it felt like there was a bigger crowd than there was when I've been to other games. So I think, just getting down, it's cheap ticket, buy a ticket, and then that just makes a difference.
Right, it does, yeah. And I hope to see as many people who listen to the Fezcast at StoneX as can make it on Sunday, where it will be an amazing game. Alex, Sam, thank you ever so much for your time recording this week's Fezcast with us. We'll be back next week on something like, it'll be in November, won't it? It'll be something like I think it'll be, would it be the 5th of November? Or yeah, we'll be out the 5th of November, the old fireworks night. So hopefully we'll have some fireworks, although fireworks have been going off around here like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's getting that even earlier and earlier. Couldn't believe the other night, frightened the dog so bad they took the Christmas tree out. But there you go. Anyway, but thank you everybody for listening in and putting up with my rubbish jokes as well, obviously. And Sam, Alex, thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing everybody who can make it down at the StoneX on Sunday. Until next week, all the best, and ta-ra!
This is the Fezcast.